The clink of champagne flutes echoed through the upscale restaurant, blending with the soft hum of conversation and the flicker of candlelight. Laughter danced around the long banquet table as servers moved elegantly between guests, pouring wine and setting down plates of rosemary chicken and wild mushroom risotto. It was meant to be a celebration. My daughter Amelia's college graduation, a moment I had envisioned for over 2 decades, had finally arrived. She sat beside me in her cap and gown, cheeks still flushed with excitement from the ceremony. I reached for her hand under the table and gave it a gentle squeeze. And then, my husband stood. Gregory Caldwell, my partner of 28 years, raised his glass. Everyone fell silent. 50 pairs of eyes turned toward him, expecting the proud father's toast. What came instead was a bullet through the heart. I've decided to start a new life without you. For a moment, no one moved. Even the clinking of cutlery fell still. The words hung in the air, cold and absolute, like frost spreading across glass. I looked up at him slowly, my heart pounding. His hand trembled slightly, but his jaw was set. Gregory had always been a man of appearances, smooth talker, meticulous dresser, firm handshake. But now his carefully polished mask was cracking. All eyes turned to me. Everyone expected the scene, the dramatic outburst, the sobbing wife, the angry confrontation, the collapse. But I didn't flinch. I simply smiled. "Congratulations on your honesty." The room remained silent. Only the flicker of Amelia's blinking eyes broke the stillness. "My name is Bianca Caldwell. I'm 54 years old, and up until that moment, I had played the role of the perfect wife and mother to perfection." Gregory stared at me confused. This wasn't the script he had prepared. "I raised our daughter," I said, my voice calm but carrying across the hushed crowd. "I supported Gregory through 3 failed business ventures, 2 midlife crises, and 1 spiritual awakening that lasted exactly 6 weeks.
A ripple of uneasy laughter moved through the guests. From the corner of my eye, I saw Cassandra Wells, the 30-something-year-old woman sitting at the back table, blonde and angular, shift uncomfortably in her seat. Her wine glass trembled in her hand. Cassandra had been in our home, sat at our table, laughed with our friends. She once called me for advice on how to get a promotion, and now she was Gregory's mistress. I reached into my handbag and pulled out a sealed, cream-colored envelope. I placed it beside Gregory's plate. His brow furrowed. "What's this?" "Something for you to read later." "Bianca." I turned to Amelia instead, kissing her gently on the cheek. Her face was pale, her eyes wide and glistening. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. No matter what happens today, this is still your day." Then I rose. I smoothed the front of my pale blue dress, tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, and addressed the table with the poise of a seasoned host. "Please, enjoy your meal. I wish you all a lovely afternoon." And with that, I walked out. No tears, no raised voice, just the steady click of my heels against polished marble floors. As the heavy oak doors closed behind me, murmurs erupted like a rising tide. Outside, the thick Augusta summer air hit me in the face, but I welcomed it. The heat was honest, searing and unrelenting, unlike the man I'd shared my life with. I hadn't made it 10 steps before I heard the door burst open behind me. "Bianca!" Gregory's voice, shrill and panicked. "Bianca, what the hell was that? What have you done?" I kept walking. Let him chase me for once. What I had done was begin the next act of my life. Begin the plan I'd been putting in place for months. The envelope I'd left beside his plate was not a farewell. It was a reckoning. A reckoning for every lie, every dollar funneled into a secret account, every dinner he bought for her while telling me we needed to cut back for retirement. He thought he was in control, that he could publicly discard me like a business deal gone sour. But Gregory forgot one thing. I was the one who kept the books.
As I walked to my car that afternoon, the summer heat pressing against my skin, I could still hear Gregory's voice echoing behind me, accusing, confused, desperate. But I didn't look back. I had stopped looking back a long time ago. Instead of returning to the restaurant, I drove straight to our home, a stately colonial nestled in Augusta's historic district, the home we had bought 15 years ago, the home Gregory had already promised to Cassandra in one of their many foolish text exchanges. He never imagined I'd read them. I pulled into the driveway, parked, and paused. The hydrangeas were blooming, the porch swing moved slightly with the breeze, and for a moment, everything looked so familiar. But everything had changed. I walked through the front door and was immediately greeted by the stillness of a house that had witnessed both dreams and betrayals. The grandfather clock, my father's, ticked solemnly in the hallway. The family portraits lined the staircase, Gregory's arm around me, Amelia in pigtails, smiles that now felt like artifacts from a distant world. Upstairs, in the master bedroom, I opened the closet. There they were. Gregory's meticulously packed suitcases, hidden behind his winter coats, ready for the exit he had planned for tomorrow. Of course he'd already packed. He'd always been careful about his clothes, and careless about everything else. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Messages poured in, from friends who had been at the restaurant, from Amelia, from Gregory's sister Diana. Everyone wanted to know what was going on, but I replied only to one. To Amelia, I'm okay. This isn't your burden to carry. Enjoy your graduation day. We'll talk tonight. I love you. I had protected her from the truth for months, waiting until after graduation. I wanted her to have this moment before everything changed. But in truth, everything had already started unraveling 3 months ago. It began with a single transaction.
I noticed a small, unaccounted transfer, $2,000 to a bank I didn't recognize. Not unusual, perhaps, to a stranger, but after 20 years of managing our household finances, I saw it immediately for what it was, out of place. At first, I didn't panic, I simply watched. Over the next few weeks, I saw more transfers. Jewelry store charges, a boutique hotel in Charleston, a beachfront property inquiry. Gregory had been clever, never too large a sum at once, but consistency is what exposes the liar, not the size of the lie. I dug deeper. I found the account hidden in his name only. I traced the purchases, noted the dates. I began logging everything, every receipt, every bank statement, every suspicious calendar invite. Then came the text messages. He had left his phone unlocked one evening. I didn't even have to look. The screen lit up with Cassandra's name and a message. Tomorrow's another step toward freedom. She'll never see it coming. They spoke of their future life, of beach houses and shared investments, of the day he would finally break free. That day, as it turns out, was today, our daughter's graduation day. It was supposed to be the moment he made his big declaration and walked away clean, with Cassandra waiting in the wings like a trophy for his bravery. But he had made one fatal mistake. He underestimated me. What Gregory forgot, what he never really understood, was that I had been a financial professional for over 30 years. While he chased dreams and burned through careers, I was the one who paid the bills, saved for Amelia's tuition, and kept us afloat. I also remembered something very important, the prenuptial agreement. When we married, I had more assets. My family had insisted on the prenup, and Gregory had agreed, somewhat smugly believing he'd someday surpass me in wealth and status. Ironically, it was his own demand for a fidelity clause that would now cost him everything.
That clause never expired, and now I had the evidence to prove his betrayal. I didn't rage. I didn't cry. I consulted a lawyer.
I copied everything: financial records, messages, the timeline. I filed for divorce 2 weeks before graduation day and had the papers sealed, ready to be served at the perfect moment. This wasn't about humiliation. This was about strategy. I didn't want Gregory to just face a failed marriage. I wanted him to face the full weight of his choices. 3 hours after I left the restaurant, I heard the front door slam open. "Bianca!" Gregory's voice echoed through the foyer. "Where are you?" I was in the living room, sitting calmly with my laptop, reviewing files. He stormed in, red-faced, sweat gathering at his temples, the envelope from the restaurant crumpled in his hand. "What is this?" he shouted. "You served me divorce papers today?" I closed the laptop, placed it gently on the coffee table, and looked up at him without emotion. "I thought it aligned nicely with your own plans." "You had no right to—" "I had every right," I interrupted, "just like you had every right to wine and dine Cassandra while telling me we couldn't afford a vacation. We all make choices, Gregory. You just happened to make yours in writing." His face twisted. "The prenup is expired. Any lawyer will say that." I smiled. "Actually, no. Section 12 states clearly that the fidelity clause remains valid for the entire duration of the marriage. You might want to read it again." He blanched. "You're bluffing." "Then by all means, call your lawyer." His voice cracked. "This is vindictive. This isn't like you." I rose from the couch, slow and composed. "Maybe you never really knew me at all." He stared at me, the mask finally falling away. "You recorded our conversations? The ones with Cassandra?" "Only the ones made in this home, and only the ones where you openly discussed your plan to defraud me. One-party consent, Gregory. Perfectly legal in Georgia." He began pacing. "I need to make some calls." "I recommend you start with your lawyer. I'll be staying at Diana's tonight. You have until tomorrow to pack your things. After that, the locks will be changed." He stopped in his tracks. "Diana's? My sister's?" I nodded. "She's quite upset, by the way. She saw you and Cassandra together last Christmas, confronted you. You lied. When she realized it wasn't just a flirtation, she came to me." Gregory staggered slightly, as though he'd been struck. "Everyone's betraying me." "No, Gregory," I said, my voice low and calm. "You betrayed yourself." As I drove away to Diana's that evening, the sky had begun to turn a deep violet, heavy with the weight of an impending storm. But for the first time in years, I felt no fear, only clarity. I was not the woman who walked out of that restaurant a few hours ago. I was not the woman he'd tried to throw away. I was someone new, and I was just getting started. Diana's house sat nestled under tall oaks just off the university campus, a cozy brick bungalow filled with the scent of jasmine, tea, and old books. She opened the door before I even rang the bell, pulling me into a fierce embrace. "I just heard from Amelia," she whispered, her voice tight with emotion. "Are you okay?" I nodded as she led me inside. Better than I expected, actually. There was already a bottle of Pinot Noir open in the kitchen. We moved to her sunroom, green with potted plants and quiet, like a sanctuary from everything I had just walked away from. "I never thought Gregory would make a spectacle like that," Diana said as she poured 2 glasses. "To humiliate you like that in front of everyone? On Amelia's day?" "It was by design," I replied. "A public rejection, so I couldn't react without seeming hysterical. He wanted to control the story." "Well," she said, clinking her glass against mine, "it seems you took control back." We sat in silence for a few minutes, sipping wine and listening to the cicadas outside. Then the chime of my phone broke the stillness. It was Amelia. Her voice was tight. "Mom, I'm coming to Aunt Diana's." "You don't have to. I'm already in the car. Dad's telling everyone you've lost your mind, that you planned this for months.
He's saying terrible things. Of course he was. Gregory had always been skilled at rewriting narratives to fit the version of reality where he remained the victim. Let him talk, I said gently. The truth doesn't need defending forever. 20 minutes later, Amelia arrived, still in her graduation dress, but barefoot and blotchy-eyed. She stepped into the sunroom, saw me, and without a word collapsed into my arms like she had when she was little. "Why didn't you tell me?" she whispered into my shoulder. "Why did you go through this alone?" "I didn't want to ruin your final semester," I said softly. "You worked so hard. I just wanted you to have this day." She pulled back, wiping her face. "Well, Dad ruined it anyway."
We moved into the living room where I told her everything. The affair, the secret account, the prenup, the plan. Amelia sat in stunned silence for a while, processing. "I knew something was off with him," she finally said. "He's been so distant, always on his phone. I didn't want to believe it, but deep down, I knew." "None of us want to see these things in the people we love," Diana said gently. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from Philip Anderson, my attorney. "Filing approved. Accounts frozen. Divorce petition formally received by court. Discovery phase to begin next week." Gregory no longer had access to the funds he'd secretly moved. Cassandra wouldn't be seeing that beach house any time soon. I handed the phone to Diana and Amelia. Amelia read the message and exhaled. "Good. He deserves it." I placed a hand over hers. "He's still your father. Maybe someday I'll forgive him," she said, "but not today." An hour later, the doorbell rang. Diana peeked out, then turned to us with an unreadable expression. "It's Gregory and Cassandra." I stood, smoothed my hair, and braced myself. Gregory entered first, jaw tight, shirt wrinkled like he'd been pulling at the collar. Cassandra followed closely behind, looking suddenly much younger than 37, and far less confident than she had when she used to strut into my kitchen asking for wine. "Bianca," Gregory began, "we need to talk. This is getting out of hand." "Is it?" I asked, folding my arms. "The accounts, the apartment, you're freezing me out." "I'm simply protecting what's mine," I replied evenly. "You're welcome to do the same." Amelia stepped forward before Gregory could speak again. "Maybe you should have thought about being reasonable before announcing to everyone that you were dumping my mom in the middle of my graduation party." Gregory blinked. "Amelia, this doesn't involve you." Her voice rose. "Doesn't involve me? You destroyed our family on my day." Cassandra reached for Gregory's arm, whispering, "Maybe we should go." He pulled away from her. "No, I'm not leaving until Bianca agrees to be rational." Diana stepped in. "Bianca's the only one being rational. You're the one who blew up your family in a restaurant." I stayed seated, watching. This was the man I had once shared everything with. The man I had believed would age beside me. And now he looked like a stranger playing a role he didn't understand. "You wanted to start a new life," I said to him. "So start it, just not with my resources." Cassandra's gaze shifted sharply to Gregory. "What does she mean? What resources?" Gregory avoided her eyes. "You didn't tell her?" I asked, feigning surprise. "About the accounts you moved? The prenup? The clause you violated?" Cassandra's voice dropped. "You have a prenup?" "It's airtight," I said, "and the judge will enforce it." Her expression curdled. "You said everything was ready. You said—" "You can speak to your boyfriend later," I said, cutting her off. "Right now, I think it's best you both leave." Amelia, her arms crossed, turned to Cassandra. "Did you know he was going to announce it like that? In front of everyone?" I thought he was going to talk to your mom privately," Cassandra muttered. "I didn't know he'd do it that way."
I stood now, finally, and looked Gregory in the eye. You have 24 hours to remove your belongings from the house. After that, the locks are changed. And don't try to move money. Everything's frozen under court order. Gregory was shaking with quiet rage. This isn't over, Bianca. No, I said calmly. It's just beginning. And I suggest you get used to losing.
He opened the door. Cassandra didn't look at anyone as she followed him out. But before stepping through the doorway, Gregory turned back once more. What about Anelia? Have you even thought about how this affects her? That did it. I took a deep breath and stared him down. Don't you dare use our daughter as your shield, Gregory. You certainly weren't thinking about her when you were sleeping with Cassandra and hiding money for a life without us. The door closed behind them. The silence was thick. Then Amelia crumpled onto the couch beside me and began to cry. I've never talked to Dad like that. I feel sick. I pulled her close. Standing up for yourself isn't easy, but it's necessary. Diana reappeared with a third glass of wine. She raised hers in a quiet toast, to new beginnings, and I lifted mine, just as steady, to the woman we buried for too long. He opened the door. Cassandra didn't look at anyone as she followed him out, but before stepping through the doorway, Gregory turned back once more. What about Anelia? Have you even thought about how this affects her? That did it. I took a deep breath and stared him down. Don't you dare use our daughter as your shield, Gregory. You certainly weren't thinking about her when you were sleeping with Cassandra and hiding money for a life without us. The door closed behind them. The silence was thick. Then Amelia crumpled onto the couch beside me and began to cry. I've never talked to Dad like that. I feel sick. I pulled her close. Standing up for yourself isn't easy, but it's necessary. Diana reappeared with a third glass of wine. She raised hers in a quiet toast, to new beginnings, and I lifted mine, just as steady, to the woman we buried for too long.
The courtroom was colder than I expected. Modern, minimalist, as if designed to strip emotion from everything that happened inside it. But I didn't feel cold. I felt ready. On the opposite bench, Gregory sat with his lawyer, whispering urgently. His sharp suit and clean shave didn't hide the exhaustion on his face. Cassandra wasn't with him. She had left town weeks ago. Amelia sat behind me with Diana, her hand resting gently on my shoulder. She had insisted on coming. Judge Evelyn Hart entered the room, a sharp woman in her 50s, known for her no-nonsense attitude and ruthless attention to detail. We stood, sat. Then the hearings began. Gregory's lawyer launched into an argument about emotional manipulation, portraying me as a vindictive ex-wife seeking to punish a man for moving on. He waved documents around, speculating that I had coerced Gregory into signing the prenup while leveraging emotional vulnerability. I didn't flinch. When my attorney stood up, Philip was calm, collected. Your Honor, he said, the evidence is irrefutable. My client built her company from the ground up. She did not inherit it. She was not gifted it. She worked. And her husband, he turned slightly toward Gregory, hid marital assets in anticipation of leaving the marriage. That, per Clause 7C of the signed prenuptial agreement, constitutes a breach of contract. He placed several binders on the table. These documents trace funds siphoned discreetly into multiple accounts, some in offshore banks, some in shell companies, all tied to the respondent, who at the time was involved in a romantic relationship with a third party. The same third party who was coincidentally our client's executive assistant. Judge Hart flipped through the papers, her brow furrowed. Philip continued. In addition, we have email correspondences between the respondent and his paramour detailing their plan to liquidate certain stocks before filing for divorce, knowing full well that would leave our client without leverage or proper compensation. Gregory's face was pale. He hadn't realized I'd gotten everything. emails, financials, even the petty messages he thought were deleted. When the judge looked up, her eyes were steely. "Mr. Langston," she said, "you seem to believe you could orchestrate a personal and financial betrayal without consequence. I assure you, the law thinks differently." Gregory opened his mouth, but Judge Hart held up a hand. "The prenup stands. The attempt to conceal assets voids any spousal claim. Mrs. Langston retains full ownership of her company, properties, and investments. Furthermore, the court grants her request for injunctive relief. You are barred from contacting her regarding business matters outside legal counsel." Gregory sagged in his chair. Then came the final blow. "Regarding emotional damages and legal fees," she said, "the court orders the respondent to pay $1.2 million in restitution." The gavel fell. It was over. Outside the courthouse, the sun was blinding, warm, real. Amelia stepped out beside me, linking her arm with mine. Diana followed, smiling gently. "You didn't just win," Amelia whispered. "You reclaimed yourself." I nodded, feeling it finally sink in. For years, I had shaped my life around Gregory's moods, his needs, his shadow. I had dulled my own light so he could feel bigger, safer, more important. But not anymore. Weeks passed. Then months. My home felt different, lighter. The air didn't hum with tension. The walls didn't echo with the silence of resentment.
One day, I stood in my walk-in closet, the same one Gregory had once insisted was too much, and pulled out an outfit I hadn't worn in years, a bold red pantsuit with gold buttons. Powerful, confident, unapologetic. I wore it to my first press event since the trial. My company had just been featured on the cover of Forbes Women, and the article was titled, "Bianca Langston, Reinvented, Unshaken." After the panel, a young woman approached me, no older than Amelia. "I watched your speech," she said shyly. "I used to think success meant being behind the scenes, letting the men talk. But you," her voice caught, "you made me believe we don't have to stay small." I hugged her because I knew that feeling too well. That night, back home, I sat by the fireplace with Amelia. We were flipping through old photo albums when she looked at me seriously. "Mom," she said, "I'm proud of you, not just for winning, but for surviving with grace." I blinked back tears. I didn't always feel graceful. "I know, but you showed me that we don't have to let people write our stories." "No," I said. "We just have to be brave enough to write our own." Epilogue. 6 months later, I launched a foundation for women entrepreneurs, rebuilding after betrayal, financial or emotional. We called it Phoenix Rising. Gregory never apologized, but I no longer needed him to. Cassandra tried to sue him for fraud. I hear she's living with her parents now, working part-time at a retail store. I don't feel smug about it. I feel free. I wasn't just a wife. I wasn't just admin. I was, and always had been, the architect of my life. And now I was building something far more beautiful than revenge. I was building me.